I think it could take it. All right. You ready? Good. We have to start because they're getting cold already. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom, everyone.
We hope that you have one of our little prayer booklets. And take a breath. Let's start at the very back, inside back cover, the second prayer down. You'll see Esa Einai, I lift my eyes up to the mountains, and you'll be able to still take a peek for a little while longer.
Esa Einai El Hari. Esa Einai El Hari. Me'ayin yavo, yavo Ezri. Me'ayin yavo, yavo Ezri. Me'ayin yavo, yavo Ezri. Me'ayin yavo, yavo Ezri. My help will come from God, maker of heaven and earth. My help will come from God, maker of heaven and earth. Esa Einai El Hari.
Wonderful. Let's turn back the very first page in our prayer booklets. At the very bottom, we have some friends. Yes, at the very bottom where it says Shabbat Candle Blessing, we're going to invite some friends to come and join us and bring some additional light, God's light, into our tent. Not a fire pit, but the next best thing is Shabbat candles. So Julian and Gemma, Maya, Michelle and David, come and join us. Hi, everyone. Maine. You should hug them. You, go ahead. Friends, while they're wishing each other a good Shabbos, we are going to invite you to rise if you are able. We turn the page. The next page is our Kiddush, and here Julian's going to be leading for us. Yay. Come over here. Did you get taller this week?
I did. I'm pretty sure.
There you go.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'achava uvratzon chinchilanu Zikaron lemase Breshit Ki hu yom techila leminka e kodesh Zecher litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'charta ve'otanu Kidashta mikol hamim V'shabbat kotzecha ve'achava uvratzon chinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Amen. L'chaim. Wonderful.
Yummy.
Oh, good. You can put, or have some more. You may be seated, friends. Let's let's turn the page. Welcome the Sabbath bride into our midst. We have a custom of rising for the very last one, where it says "Boi v'shalom." Boi, lavo, is the verb about coming, and as the Sabbath comes, we traditionally will rise and greet her, and you can face this way if you choose, and we can welcome the Sabbath together.
Ya la 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 dodi likrat kala. Ya la 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 bene Shabbat nikava. Ah, shamor b'sachor v'diburecha Ishmi'anu el ha'miuchad. Oh, Adonai echad u'shemo echad L'shem multiferet ve'litila. Ya la 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 dodi likrat kala. Ya la 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 bene Shabbat nikava. Ah, likrat Shabbat lechu v'necha Ki mekor habracha. Oh, nerosh v'kedem nesucha. Sof maseh v'machshavat chila. Ya la 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 dodi likrat kala. Ya la 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 bene Shabbat nikava. Ah, mikdash melech מלוכה קומי צאי מתוך אפיך רב לך שבט עמק הבכה והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה יאללה לילה 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 חדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה לילה 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 בני שבת נקבלה הינבי מאפקומי לישי בגדי תפתח אני יד בני שי ותלחמי קורבה אל נפשי גאלה יאללה לילה 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 חדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה לילה 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 בני שבת נקבלה לחדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה 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 בני שבת נקבלה לחדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה 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 בני שבת נקבלה התעוררי התעוררי כי באורך ומאורי אורי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לחדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה 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 פני שבת נקבלה לחדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה 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 פני שבת נקבלה בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובצולה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה בואי חלה לחדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה 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 פני שבת נקבלה לחדרתי לקראת קלה יאללה 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 פני שבת נקבלה.
May be seated. The very next page. Shalom Aleichem. Let's welcome these angels into our midst.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shalom Aleichem, Malachi Hasharet, Malachi Elyon Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Shalom Malchei Shalom Malchei Elyon Melech Malchei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruch Shalom Malchei Shalom Malachi Elyon, Melech Malchei Hamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Boachem Shalom, Malachi Hashalom, Malachi Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Seitchem l'shalom, Malachei HaShalom, Malachei Elyon, Melech Malachei Hamlachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Let's turn the page. We ask you to rise if you are able. We continue with the Baruch Hu at the bottom.
Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam va'ed, Le'olam, 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 Le'olam va'ed. Ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la la, ya la la la, ya la 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 la.
The very next page, it says Ma'ariv Aravim. In the middle of that reading, you'll see El Chai V'Kayam, which is a section that repeats from time to time, and additional words at the bottom. Join along with us.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv aravim v'chochma poteach she'arim Echai v'kayam tamid yimloch Aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aravim. Uvidvuna meshaneh itim u'machalim et hazmanim umsader et hakochavim v'mishmaroteam barakia yirtzono Echai v'kayam tamid yimloch Aleinu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai HaMa'ariv Aviv Aravim. The days roll into evening, the moon rises in the sky, then sinks slow, giving way to light. You bring about the sun each day, you brighten everything, then you fill our sky with stars. In all this song we sing. Echad v'kayam tamid imoch aleinu leolam va'ed baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Let's turn the page 2 pages forward. You find Shema, the one that has Sam Powers next to it. Let's join along.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Leolam Vaed. Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Leolam Leolam Vaed. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. You shall love God with all of your heart, with soul and with all of your might. You shall teach your children to grow, to love and to know what is right. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la. Yai la 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 la.
May be seated. Let's turn forward again in our prayer booklets, 2 more pages. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi chamocha, who is like you? Our prayer of redemption, our prayer of strength, our prayer of hope, that we can get through difficult times, through turbulent waters, and make it to the other side.
Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, osef aleh, nora tehilot, osef aleh, malchutecha, ra'uvanecha, bokei hayam, לפני משה, זה הילי, אנו ויאמרו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. ימלוך לעולם ועד.
Let's turn the page. At the very bottom, Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom, asking God to spread a sukkah of peace, a shelter of peace over us, over that dog, over all we know.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Spread the shelter of your peace over us. Guide us in wisdom, compassion, and trust. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. Save us for the sake of your name. Shield us from hatred, sorrow, and pain. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu Leshalom V'hamidenu Shomreinu L'chaim. L'chaim. L'chaim.
We invite you to rise. We move into the tefillah. We turn forward 3 pages ahead, and we find in the middle of the page, Adonai Sefatai Tiftach.
Yalai, lai, 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 Adonai. Yalai, lai, 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 Sefatai Tiftach. Yalai, lai, 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Yalai, lai, lai, Adonai. Yalai, lai, 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 Sefatai Tiftach. Yalai, lai, 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Yalai, lai, 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 Adonai. Yalai, lai, 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 Sefatai Tiftach. Yalai, lai, 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 Ufi Yagid. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu ve'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanara El Elyon Gomel Chasadim Tovim Ve'Konei Hakol Ve'Zocher Chastei Ahavot V'Imahot U'Mevi Yehulah Livnei V'neihem Leman Shemo B'Ahava Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'ezrat Sarah. Atah gibor leolam Adonai, Mechayeha kol atah rav lehoshia. Mashiva ruach umarira Hashem, Mechakel chaim bechesed, Mechayeha kol berachamim rabim, Samech noflim verovech cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayim emunato, Lishenei avar, Michamocha ba'al gevurot, Umito meloch, melech memit, Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata lahachayot hakol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh hakol, Ata kadosh v'shimcha kadosh, Ukdoshim b'chol yom yahalelucha selah, Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh.
You may be seated. Top of the next page, Shalom Rav. God of peace, great and abundant peace, let that peace come down on all of us.
Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav, Al Yisrael Amcha, Tasim Leolam. Hi hatahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Hi hatahu melech adon, lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. Shalom Rav, al Yisrael amcha, tasim leolam. V'tov be'enecha levarech et amcha Yisrael b'chol et u'b'chol shah b'shlomecha. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
Let's take some quiet, some time for our own personal and silent prayer.
Say shalom b'mroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. Oh, say shalom b'mroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru amen. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la 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 la. Ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la, ya la la ya la 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 la. Yose shalom bimroma, hu yaseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru Amen.
It's after our prayers for peace where we think about others, think about folks who are in the midst of struggle. We are going to share again our Misha Berach, a newer one that we've been learning together. But first, if there's someone on your mind, someone in your hearts, someone whose name you want to lift up, who can use some prayer and hope and love and strength from us, you can share those names out loud.
Repeat after me these words, Mishaberach, and then we do a call and response, and then together we sing El Na Rafana La. Oh, I pray that you heal her, or El Na Rafana Lo. I pray that you heal him. El Na Rafana Lanu. I pray that you heal all of us. Mishaberach,
Mishaberach,
Avotenu,
Avotenu,
Makor HaChaim,
Makor HaChaim,
Ve'imotenu,
Ve'imotenu,
Hu Yivarech,
Hu Yivarech,
Ve'yiraveh,
Ve'yirapeh,
Et HaCholim,
Et HaCholim,
Et HaCholim,
Et HaCholim,
El Na Revana
La,
El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lanu, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lanu. Mishaberach,
Mishaberach,
Avotenu,
Avotenu,
Makor HaChaim,
Makor HaChaim,
Ve'imotenu,
Ve'imotenu,
Hu Yivarech,
Hu Yivarech,
Ve'yiraveh,
Ve'yirapeh,
Et HaCholim,
Et HaCholim,
Et HaCholim,
Et HaCholim,
El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lanu, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lo, El Na Revana Lanu.
Amen. I think the words I wanted to share tonight kind of fall into that theme of doing a little bit of healing, of trying to think of others who might be in the midst of some sort of a struggle. Today, in this Shabbat, we read in the Torah about a really painful story. It's a story about the banishment of Hagar. Hagar and her son Ishmael from Abraham and Sarah's household. So let's remember who they are. Abraham and Sarah, according to the Torah, we're still in the book of Genesis, they're unable to have any children. And it's painful for any family. For any family. But in the ancient world, before any kind of medical intervention was possible, surrogacy was commonplace. So they made arrangements for Sarah's servant, or perhaps slave. Her name was Hagar, and she was an Egyptian woman, and she was instructed, it seems, to be with Sarah's husband, Abraham, so that they could have a child. And again, this wasn't uncommon, and the child would be the child of Sarah and Abraham. That was the plan. And eventually, Hagar became pregnant, had a child. The child's name is Ishmael. God heard. And there were tensions that were growing within this household. Tensions grew between the women. Tensions grew between the child. And as Sarah eventually does become pregnant and gives birth to Isaac, we see an even greater tension. Sometime later, something had happened that was enough for Sarah. The rabbis say that something really foul happened in the midst of this house that was involving Ishmael, but the text isn't so clear. What is clear is that Sarah had enough. She tells Abraham, her husband, that Hagar and Ishmael, Abraham's son, needed to go. And they were banished from the home. They were cast out. In fact, the text actually says, cast out that slave woman and her son, says Sarah, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance, with my son Isaac. Abraham is feeling really challenged by all of this and asks God for some guidance. And God said, listen to your wife. Follow Sarah's instruction. And God promised Abraham not to worry too much because his other son, Ishmael, the older son, was also going to be a great nation. That's what we're reading this Shabbat. And over the years, even since I was a kid and I first heard this part of our ancient text, I always felt such sympathy. My heart always kind of broke a little bit for, not a little bit, it really broke for Hagar and for Ishmael. But I also felt badly for Sarah and for Abraham. What was going on within them? I thought of the challenges of this family, the dysfunction that was there, the jealousy, a lack of trust, all within the same house. And I've always considered that our tradition wants us to feel this kind of sympathy toward those who feel like outsiders. And it's no mistake. The outsiders in this text is Hagar, the Egyptian slave woman, and Ishmael, who eventually is going to be known as the father of the Arab people. And our tradition is saying, these are the people who are feeling wounded. And it's written in a way so that we would feel their wounds. I think it's very intentional. They are the ones who feel like the outsiders, and it's from the hands of our greatest patriarch and matriarch, Abraham and Sarah. I think that can teach us a lot about sympathy and empathy and how we can make mistakes. Even good people can mismanage a difficult situation. But this text, this Shabbat, as I keep learning, I have a new insight that I want to share. It's not really mine. It's from another teacher. I have a new concern about Hagar. And my anguish about focusing on Hagar raises even higher. I learned from Rabbi Danya Rotenberg, who's a great writer. She writes in newspapers. She has some books. She's also the scholar in residence for the National Council of Jewish Women. And she says, Hagar here is an enslaved woman, a cultural stranger, without linguistic or kinship ties, and perhaps any protection. We don't know anything about her backstory in the Torah, but most critically, she says, nowhere in these verses does Hagar consent to have her body taken. Her reproductive life is not her own. She is not able to make any choices of her own. She is not given any agency or dignity. Just look at the verbs that get used in the process of the unfolding story of our holy text. It says, V'tikach Sarai, Eshet Avraham. So Sarai, Abram's wife, that's their names before their big name changes, Sarai and Abram. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took her enslaved woman, Hagar the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt in the land of Canaan for 10 years. And then the text says, Vatitenota, and gave her Hagar. Sarai gave Hagar to her husband, Abram, as a wife. She is taken and she is given. She is not asked. She does not get to choose. Her reproductive life is not her own. We do not hear her voice or consent in any of the previous verses either. And then in today's reading, we see Hagar and Ishmael are sent out into the wilderness because Sarah doesn't want Ishmael to share an inheritance with her biological son Isaac. Again, Hagar has no voice, no agency, and no choice. And it struck me. From Rabbi Rotenberg, I learned about another organization that I think is really interesting. It's called Sister Song, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. Talk about empowered. They teach us. Now, I've always been involved through the Jewish community in work relating to the reproductive rights of women. But Sister Song is advocating for not just reproductive rights, but reproductive justice. Justice, which they define as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. Reproductive justice brings a racial and economic justice framework to the work of reproductive freedom, recognizing and addressing disparities in social, economic, and political power, and how this impacts access to reproductive health care. Needless to say, Hagar did not have the right to make any decisions about whether to have children, or the right or the ability to parent the child she did have in a safe and sustainable way. She was not given access to justice. And disproportionately, those impacted by restrictions on health care and reproductive health care are those with less power, less access in our society. They are black, indigenous people, people of color in general, people struggling to get by, people who don't have enough money to feed their families or themselves, immigrants, asylum seekers, and others. And yes, I'm saying people. I'm saying people because there are others who don't identify as women who are able to get pregnant and have children. So these restrictions that we see in our day and age are also dangerous for LGBTQ plus individuals as well. So why do I share this with you? Why do I risk the commentary of Rabbi, you're getting political again? I don't see it as political. I see it as Jewish values. Because according to classic understandings of Jewish law, abortion has always been permitted. Always has been permitted. It is an option when someone's health is at stake, and it's a requirement if the individual is in danger. A requirement. In Jewish tradition and in different movements and outlooks, reproductive health is a part of essential health care. We don't rely on miracles or wait for God to intervene to fix something. In the Jewish community, in every movement, in every part of our tree of the Jewish community and its branches, medical interventions are necessary for lots of different things, including vaccines. We have to engage in science to help. We have to seek out a physician's help and guidance. We rely on medicine, and we rely on health care. And there are many ways to engage in ethical choices and decisions for each of us, and our faith traditions matter. But I can't stand by in America to see people of one faith tradition legislate its values, no matter what they are, over another faith tradition. We have to look at our own house and make choices. And there is more than one way to be faithful and pro-family and pro-life and pro anything else you want to throw out there. We learn from our sources that we cannot remain indifferent when it comes to take care of our responsibilities for those who are the most vulnerable among us. Perhaps that's why, according to Rabbi Rutenberg, that we read these verses in a traditional synagogue. These verses about Hagar and Ishmael are read on Rosh Hashanah, on the Jewish New Year, holiest days on our Jewish calendar. Perhaps that's to remind us of the harm done to Hagar, to give us the opportunity to remind ourselves that we can and we must do better, that we must fight for a world with more light, more dignity, more wholeness, more love, more kindness, more compassion, more sympathy, and more empathy for everyone. And I think we must fight for reproductive justice for everyone. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Aleinu l'shabeach, back into our prayer booklets. If you are warm enough to take your hands out of your pockets, you can turn to the page towards the end. It says concluding prayers at the top. Aleinu l'shabeach is at the bottom. We invite you to rise if you are able.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד הארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל. שכינתו זו ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום, וידעת היום, והשב אותה אל לבביך. כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, והארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
May be seated for a moment. Zichronam levracha. May their memories be for a blessing. If you are observing a yahrzeit and would like to share the name of the one whom you are remembering out loud and with us, we invite you to rise for a moment, share their names. We'll join you and in the words of Kaddish, but first let's do this sharing. So those names, we add the following in the period of Shloshim, those first 30 days. We remember our congregant Sally Schenkman, the wife of Paul Schenkman. We remember Miles Portman, the father of Natalie Portman Marsh, Jeff Storm, the brother-in-law of Jill Oliver, and those yahrzeits that we recall for this week that is past: Els Amanda Valk, Rose Stark, Gloria Mendelson, Jacqueline Reams, Bella Shusterova, Nicole Bouquet, Sarah Sally Levenstein, Morris Goldman, Mark Ehrlich, Joan Sutton, Jacob Friedman, Esther Taxman, Ida Nemirovskoya, Karen Berner, Muriel Burkhauer Goldberg, Simon Zucker, Paula Klein, Randy Robinson Cohen, Edgar Stillman Krass, Jill Kreitman, Rabbi Alexander Schindler, Mildred Wagner, Sidney Weiss, and I also want to add Colin Powell. Kaddish is a couple of pages forward. It says Mourner's Kaddish, Kaddish Yatom at the top. We invite our community to rise together if you are able. Symbolically, we stand with and surround our friends who are mourners themselves, sharing some of our strength with them. Yitgadal, v'yitkadash shemei rabba, v'yalma divrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael, v'agala u'vizman kariv, v'yimeru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevarach, le'alam u'me'el maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei d'kudisha b'richu, le'ela min kol berachata v'shirata, tush berachata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'meru, amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, v'meru, amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei Adam v'yimeru amen. May the source of strength send strength and peace and wholeness to all who are in midst of struggling, to the bereaved here and everywhere. Let's all say Amen. You may be seated. Julie, why don't you come here for a sec? Stand by the fire. No, don't do that. I was kidding. I really think you got taller this week. We wish you and your family Mazal Tov. We know that you are somebody who thinks it is incumbent upon us to take some stands, actually, to try and make a difference and bring some healing to what seems to be a broken world, and not to wait for somebody else to do it. It's in our hands. And for somebody who is as old as you are, and you're so old, we can appreciate that, and we can respect that, and we can be inspired by that. We hope that you continue to go and grow from strength to strength, to try and bring that oiling can to all of the squeaky doors and gates within our world, or at least the ones that you find, the ones that you encounter, and try and bring some release and some wholeness and to relieve some pain. I think that is a beautiful task. And I actually think you might do some of that work. And I'm grateful that you and your family are here with us. So, from our congregation to you, my friend, a yad, may you use it well and often. And we're excited to celebrate this Shabbat together with you and with those who are visiting you. Shabbat Shalom. The very back of our prayer booklets, we'll be so grateful, by the way, for two things to happen. One is, at the very end of our service, we can bring these little booklets back to the box. You can leave chairs. We're leaving everything where they are right now. For our friends who've been online, we're glad that you were able to join us warmly while we're out here in the dark. Ele Chamda Libi, the inside of the back cover. And then after this prayer, there'll be one last thing to do.
Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi. So do it again. Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi. Husano le'al natitale, Husano le'al natitale, Husano le'al natitale, Husano le'al natitale. Ele Chamda Libi, Ele Chamda Libi.
Wonderful. We're going to wish you a Shabbat Shalom, and the last thing you have to do is turn to a neighbor, someone you do not know, introduce yourselves, and share with them a Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. One person you do not know. Share your name. You don't have to shake hands.